Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody can hear us okay. I appreciate everybody joining us. Today we're going to talk about our Eversafe disaster recovery and business continuity solution. We're going to start off with a short presentation talking about the technology and the need for it, and then we will go and actually do a demonstration of the solution. If you have any questions, feel free to enter them into the question panel in the Zoom meeting, and we'll make sure we get to them at the end, or we can of course take them offline afterwards as well. Just let me know in the chat session if everybody can hear me okay. Let me just kill that. Kill that. Okay, great. Then we'll get started here. So my name is Mark Chinsky, and I head up the Eversafe division over at Clients First Technology Solutions. As you can see here, just a few of the minor disasters that can occur in New York City. So just give you a little background on who Clients First is. We have 7 locations around the U.S. Our Eversafe solution is available virtually everywhere in the world, over 100 employees, and our roots are in ERP software, whether it be Epicor, Microsoft Dynamics, SAP, and Sage. And out of those software solutions, we realized that most of our clients did not have a backup and, more importantly, a failover solution, so that if something occurred in their infrastructure, they could continue using the software and conducting business. And that's where Eversafe was born out of. In addition, we also do Microsoft Azure-based cloud hosting for clients who don't want any hardware or equipment on premises and would rather it hosted off premises as well. So we have both bases covered for ensuring maximum uptime. Myself, I'm the managing director here. I've got over 25 years experience in this field, and I head up our IT and disaster recovery solutions group as well. So why would we want to even talk about disaster recovery? Well, there are many, many reasons why a system or a company can have significant downtime or have to deal with problems. So, one example is a flood, wind, power failure, or what we've seen very commonly lately, ransomware, or even a dollar sprinkler head component in your server room busting and flooding your server room. And of course, Mr. Murphy would ensure that happens at 7 o'clock on a Friday night so that when you come into the office on Monday, all your equipment is destroyed. Or human error, which is the most common. Somebody goes ahead and deletes a large number of files or merges 5,000 customers into one customer and there's no undo feature, things of that nature. Just some high profile examples of significant downtime. You may remember some years ago, the Sony PlayStation network was down for almost an entire month, which almost took them out of the running as a major player in the video game business. It cost them billions of dollars. Later that year, of course, nobody can forget, especially if you're in the northeast of the U.S., Hurricane Sandy, and a number of businesses that were taken out offline who lost their equipment or connections or connectivity to any and all of their systems. A year later, ransomware was born, and that's actually continued to not go away whatsoever. Ransomware is very vicious, is very easily gotten, and once it gets into just one of your employees' workstations, it quickly spreads and encrypts all of the files on all of your servers, making them completely useless unless you have a very good backup and disaster recovery solution that can recover point-in-time snapshots of all your files quickly. Just recently in ransomware news, a hospital in Hollywood had to pay over $17,000 in Bitcoin to Russian hackers after all of their files had gotten encrypted. And this is a hospital, not a small business that wasn't equipped to handle computer security. So, with those kinds of problems out there, what is business continuity? First of all, for those of you that have real-time business solutions like an ERP package, like Microsoft Dynamics or Epicor or SAP, these systems always have their files and databases in use. You can't just simply take a copy of the files or depend on those files and back them up somewhere, because if they're in use, most Inexpensive backup solutions will skip those files and they won't be usable for restoration. In addition, most business processes today now are tech dependent. There's very few things you can do as a business if your systems are all down. File backup, which is the most common we see, is fine for your Microsoft Office files, for Word docs, Excel. But for ERP and CRM, as I mentioned here, this is not going to work when you go to restore your files. And your files are always in use. You can't say, well, we'll shut the system down at night and back it up, because people with mobile devices often need connectivity to these systems at any time, anywhere. More important, a file backup solution, which probably a lot of you are using, is easy to use but very difficult to restore from. First of all, let's say one of your servers was destroyed or a hard drive went and you had only a file backup. The first thing you'd have to do is replace your hardware. It either need to be repaired or replaced, and replacement hardware can take 1 or 2 weeks to receive, even with a rush order. You have to install your Windows operating system, then wait hours for service packs to download and install. You have to recreate all of your printers, all of your network configurations. You may need to create all of your users' security and domains if your Active Directory server was also destroyed. You'll have to install all your ancillary software like antivirus, SQL Server, and all their related service packs and updates. Then you'd have to restore all your data directories and reapply security from your file backup. Then you would have to install, in this case, a Sage ERP package or whatever application you're running and restore all those service packs. Then restore your ERP database. Then potentially have to put in license keys and customization. So you can see if you had a total server outage, a traditional file backup solution is very poor and could easily take 1 to 3 weeks from the point of failure to the point you're running again. Just to give you an idea of the cost of that downtime, it could take 2 days to 2 weeks to replace the hardware, easily 2 days to rebuild the server, another day for lost data to be re-entered, assuming you're only backing up once a day, and let's assume your business has 30 employees. From a man-hours perspective, that's between 1,200 and 3,100 man-hours of downtime. Using the average, that's $100,000 of cost to your company for this outage. Now, some of you may have more sophisticated backup solutions that use imaging software or even virtual machines like VMware where you can snapshot it. However, it's still no picnic. First of all, assuming your VM host or your virtual machine host was damaged, you have to repair or replace it. You may have to reinstall the VM host software along with service packs, and we actually had a situation like this with one of our clients who did not have Eversafe. You have to configure your VM software to work with the images you're restoring, which includes reconfiguring your virtual networks, your networking, and then you have to restore these humongous virtual machine image files. Hope that any one of these images are not corrupt and that they were backed up recently. Most think that you're good with a daily backup, but with 30 people, that could mean as much as 8 hours of work lost times 30. So using that same downtime calculation with image-based backup, you can still have a loss of as much as $87,000 of business losses because of the downtime, even if you're using imaging software. You may be using a cloud backup solution like Mozy Pro or Carbonite or any other number of consumer commercial solutions. Typically, they have very slow downloads, and in many cases, the less expensive ones won't ship you your data on DVDs. That means it could take literally days or weeks to download a terabyte of data from their cloud data center to yours. Even if it is a DVD, typically these companies are manning their data centers with overseas foreign support, and it could be very slow to ship. It could be days before they ship the DVD and a week before you get it. They have little expertise to help you with your restoration process other than getting you your raw data files. And many only offer business hours support, i.e. 9 to 5. Some of the less expensive providers like Carbonite heavily throttle the speeds, so large backups can be very slow because they don't want to spend the costs of having extreme bandwidth available. And many tout their real-time backup of files, meaning as you save your file, it's backed up, which sounds great, except when you have a solution like CryptoLocker hit you, ransomware, it goes out and encrypts all your files, which tells the backup software all your files have changed, and it goes out and backs up all of your encrypted files, so that restoring all of the files from a point in time before the encryption can be an agonizing process. Some might think, well, let's just move all our systems to the cloud and then we won't have any on-premise problems or backup risks. First of all, most SaaS or cloud solutions are multi-tenant. That means you and other companies are sharing the same servers with the same data. Your data is literally commingled with others and can often only be restored in a disaster. This means, for example, if you're on, let's say, NetSuite or Salesforce, if the server that had your data on it was destroyed, of course they can restore it. But if one of your employees left the company and decided to delete 1,000 records, they can't restore just your data. That is totally your responsibility, and most people on SaaS solutions don't realize that. Many cloud services back up your files, and some may even back up your images, but they don't do it frequently. Typically, at best, they're doing once per day backups of your cloud data center files, which means you could lose as much as 8 hours of data per employee. And many of them who give you these guarantees of 99.99% uptime or what have you, really, if you read the fine print, it's like the cable company. All they're responsible for is crediting you that 1 day's downtime and charges, which may only be a few $100s, not the fact that it cost you tens of thousands of dollars of having your employees with no access to any systems waiting for them to come back online. So if you take a look at this was a picture of Hurricane Sandy as it was slamming into the continental U.S. Now, something prolific was stated by Admiral Stephen Stercati of the Space Shuttle Columbia Disaster Investigation Board. Don't confuse the probability of failure with the consequence of a failure. What that means is just because it's very unlikely that your servers are going to be down or you're going to have a fire, that you should ignore that. Should that small likeliness happen, what the consequences of that likeliness were, which in the case of the space shuttle was an inexpensive O-ring ended up costing many lives and billions of dollars. According to the Disaster Recovery Journal, 90% of companies that lost their IT data or systems for more than 10 days had filed for bankruptcy within 1 year of the disaster. So that's a pretty sobering statistic in terms of what the cost of downtime can really be if you're not properly protected. Small businesses on average lose over $15,000 to $50,000 a day, depending on their size, of downtime, which shows you how quickly you can justify the cost of a business continuity solution. And what are some of those costs? Lost days, contract failures you may have with your suppliers or customers, lost billings, missed shipments, service failures, and of course employee costs. And some of the issues and challenges or risks are a lack of planning for return to normal. Many people may have a good backup plan, but very few have a proper plan on how to get back to normal operations, which can often be more complicated than the initial failover. Many IT professionals don't have real-world experience to understand all of these impacts, and unfortunately, they learn about these problems during their first and maybe your last disaster. I bet during Sandy you wish you were down here in the Bahamas. Well, unfortunately at that time, your IT manager just happened to be in the Bahamas, and he had no cell phone coverage, no computer access, and this is literally what happened to one of our clients recently when they had a site disaster and they weren't using Eversafe. Their IT manager basically managed any kind of recovery process, and if that person is on vacation or somewhere where they don't have internet access, or maybe you're affected by the same regional disaster as you, then all of a sudden your whole recovery process goes out the window because it's all dependent on one individual. According to Symantec doing a study, only half of small and mid-sized businesses have some kind of backup and disaster recovery plan. And of the half that has the plan, only 28% actually tested the plan, which is a pretty scary statistic. So how do you prepare for disaster? Well, one of the first things you need to do is create a business impact template, which shows all of your business equipment units and what the recovery strategy is for each of those. If we zoom in a little further, we can see it should also include things like your routers, your switches, your hubs, your whole net. You could have a perfectly working network except one switch could go down and now you have no IT systems. So you should have redundancy or backups stored in a closet for any key pieces of equipment that can take your entire network down. You also should rank your RTO and RPO. This is an important term in the industry. RPO is the recovery point objective. That means how much data can you afford to lose in a downtime? Can you only afford to lose seconds like the stock exchange, minutes, hours, or could you lose 3 or 4 days of data and still rekey it comfortably? Only you can determine what you're willing to risk in this regard. However, historically, the less potential data loss you want, the more expensive the solution because it's able to back up more frequently without affecting performance. On the other side is your RTO, meaning after the disaster occurred, what's your recovery time objective, meaning from the point of disaster, how quickly do you want to be up and running again? Again, historically, the faster you want to be up and running again, the more expensive the solution. If you don't mind waiting hours, days, or weeks to get back up and running, you can use less expensive solutions. Then you should go ahead and create a plan. This should include a business communication plan, which has the peoples, the names, the addresses, all of the contact information for all your key people in your organization so that you can be sure you have a way of getting in touch with them, as you won't know whether the internet or phones or anything else will be working at that time. And these should all be stored in paper copies in employees' homes because you don't know if you'll have access to electronic versions of these should disaster strike. Even the cell phone networks went down in many cases during Hurricane Sandy as an example. You then should prioritize your recovery procedures and make sure your plan is updated at least quarterly, because if you change your hardware or your software scenario and don't update your plan, when you go to execute your recovery, you'll find it's out of date. And then the most important part is test your plan. An untested disaster recovery plan is almost like having no plan at all. According to Symantec, half of the disaster recovery tests tested failed, and even a higher statistic among smaller businesses. With most traditional backup systems, a full test, really a true full disaster test, requires complete duplicate spare hardware so that you can do complete restorations to equipment as if you're simulating a real-world disaster. These tests should be tested no less than once a year for a complete disaster test, and it's likely your first test is going to be problematic, but that's the purpose, to bring out whatever problems may be in your system. So let's look at a real business continuity example using Eversafe. What if, for example, important files are deleted accidentally? The first thing you're going to want to do is just be able to restore backup files that are only minutes old to regular servers from the Eversafe appliance. And this is the typical situation when you want a backup program. And Eversafe does this as well as any solution you'll see for simply restoring files. And typically you can restore them in minutes. Now suppose your company is hit by a virus, or your server suffers a hardware failure. Here's where Eversafe starts differentiating itself from traditional backup solutions. You can instantly fail over to our on-premise appliance, piece of enterprise-grade hardware that can now run all of the operations of your server that was damaged for as long as it takes for you to replace that server. And then when your replacement server is put in, we can fail back from the failover server to your live server after hours so that it has no effect on your people. And typically at most your downtime is 15 minutes. And here's just two real-world examples of some messages we got from clients who did not have proper backup. And in this case, this client had 3 months of data just disappear, and they did not have these tested backup scenarios like they had hoped. Or here is another one that we had a couple of months ago where a client thought they were backing up the system, but because it was running on an old Windows 2000 server, their backup software became incompatible with it and nobody had been checking it. Again, they lost significant amounts of data. Now, suppose you have a full disaster. Your building is hit with a fire or a flood. Then you have the ability, typically in less than an hour, to fail over to our data center in the cloud, which already has snapshots, typically from the night before, of all of your servers. Then your employees can work from their homes in the cloud, and then once your servers are rebuilt and replaced and your office is remitigated or you've moved, we send you a new Eversafe appliance, because the original was probably destroyed alongside your server equipment, and use that to restore all of your systems over a weekend, and then your people come in that Monday morning, and again, at most they lose an hour of capability to your systems, even if you suffer a complete loss at your facility. Just to give you an idea of where Eversafe prices, if you were looking at a file-based only cloud solution like, say, Mozy Pro, they would typically charge for you to protect a terabyte of data about $550 a month. If you were to look at our Eversafe solution, we would charge you $1,800 for the hardware appliance and $600 a month. So for very little more than a simple online-only, file-only solution that offers no continuity, just restoration of files over the internet, which can be very slow, you have no downtime and duplicate multiple data center and on-premise backups and failover capability. So let's go ahead and take a demo. So we will go ahead and we will minimize this, and we will bring up our control panel. So this is our in-house Eversafe device using our own live servers here, since we eat our own dog food, as they say. And you can see here, this is our overview dashboard, which shows you at a glance how much of our local hard drive storage is used. In this case, we have a 3 terabyte unit, which is typically rated for up to about 1.5 terabytes of local data to back up. Here is our replication status, which is the last time these backups were sent to the data center in the cloud and what time by server name. And then here is all of the servers that are being backed up, their IP information, how much RAM, CPUs that are in those servers. Some of these can be physical, some can be virtual. We can do either or very fluently. Now let's go ahead and take a look at one of our live servers. So we have a server here. This is using Microsoft Dynamics NAV, and this is our live server. You can see here I can click on the Dynamics icon here and launch the ERP application. And now we have the application. We can do functions like look at posted invoices here, drill down on the invoice. We could even print preview an invoice. This is a fairly complex application. It's running SQL Server and a variety of other services on the box. And let's go ahead right now real quick and open up Microsoft Word. Oops, that's Visio. Open up Word. Create a test document, save it on the desktop. And now we have a document on our desktop here that I created. This is our live server. Now I'm going to simulate a disaster by taking this live server and shutting it down. Actually, before we do that, we're going to go ahead and make a backup of it manually. Normally our backups occur automatically once per hour, but we'll go ahead and trigger a manual backup. So we go back to our Eversafe console here. We go to our Protect tab. Find that server, which is the NavX server, and we're just going to manually start a backup here. So now it's going to go ahead and take a complete snapshot of everything about that server. Operating system, files, structures, literally a complete clone. However, with our inverse chain technology, our system is able to make an entire snapshot in less than half a gig of space, which is the delta between this and the prior snapshot. If we were to go ahead and look at our prior snapshots, I could look at all of our recovery points for this server, and you can see by date and time each of the backups made by day. And on any given backup, you may see what's called a screenshot. If you click on this, this shows you that the machine was automatically booted inside the Eversafe device and shown that it's ready for Control-Alt-Delete log on. And then you get an email of this picture sent to you every day proving that every server is backed up and ready to boot in failover if necessary. And you can see each of these backups. And at any point, you can delete any one of these backups or more than one of these backups without any effect on the backups that come after it, unlike traditional backup software. So if any of these are corrupt or problematic, every backup afterwards is fully intact. If we go back to our Protect tab and go back, we'll see it's still doing the backup, so we'll just wait for that to complete. On that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and as soon as this is done, this next backup, then we're going to go ahead and shut down the original server here. So let's assume we're having a disaster. We'll go ahead and we'll go to the live server and go ahead and shut it down. And now that server is shut down. Now, if we go over to our Restore tab here, you can see here is all of your servers, and the server that we're working with here is our Dynamics Nav server. And we can do a number of things here. We can restore files, we can boot that backup locally in our hardware, or we can virtualize it in the cloud, as well as some other advanced options. If we simply wanted to restore files from this server, the latest backup it has was the one we just made a moment ago. If we go ahead and pick one of these here and say Start File Restore, the system will now go ahead and reassemble that image into a file where if we say Access Web Share, we can now browse the hard drive of that server and go in and find whatever files that we might want, such as Document and Settings, Administrator, and then My Documents, for example, My Music, My Pictures, what have you. In addition, you could do it through this browser interface, or you can also do it through your Windows File Explorer. So if we were to go ahead and open up the Windows File Explorer here and put in that same URL, we can see the hard drive of that backed up server, and then can go into here and look for any files that you might want, like PDF files, for example. And you can see it's very quick access to all of the files and all of the subdirectories there. Now, let's say you needed to do something besides getting access to those files. So we'll go ahead and unmount this backup and go back, and let's assume the server crashed and we need to go ahead and bring it up inside the Eversafe device. So we'll go into the server we want, and we're going to say Local Virtualization, pick the point in time that we want to restore from, and then say Start Virtualization. We pick how much RAM, what kind of network status we want. Now, in this case, we'll just bring this server up offline so that if you're experimenting or want to use this to test an upgrade of some software, it won't show up on your regular network along with your live server. If you'd said connected, then this server will show on your network to your users like any other server, but typically you wouldn't want both on the network at the same time because you would then have machine conflicts. So while we're doing this, the Eversafe has gone ahead, reassembled that backup into a virtual machine, and is now booting the machine and giving us a little preview of it over here. If we want to go ahead and remote desktop into that machine that's in the process of booting, we would just simply click on this, say open the RDP connection, and now you can see the machine is booting up with all of the various services such as SQL Server and everything else starting up in our backup copy, which is running inside our device, which is this .98, which is our Eversafe. So now it's ready to log in. We'll Control-Alt-Delete to log in, put in our password. And here what you'll see is that test document I created in our live server is in the backup image. So you know there's no smoke and mirrors here. This is the actual backup that we had just made with that. And to show you that it's able to back up SQL Server and everything else, we'll go ahead and launch the ERP program. Here it is. And now we'll go to our posted documents, go to our posted invoices, open up the invoice. As you can see, it's very fast. It's pretty much the same speed as the original server, even though this thing only fired up from a cold state seconds ago. And then we'll preview the document. And now, just for simplicity, we'll go ahead and shut down. Actually, we'll keep this running and we'll just minimize it. Now, let's suppose you had a disaster on a site and you now wanted to spin it up in the cloud. Again, you would go to the Restore tab here and you would go to NavX and you would say Virtualize in the cloud, which I already kicked off a little earlier just to test. So if I go to that, you can see we have it virtualized in the cloud and I can access it in our cloud data center here, which is off our premises. And let us just minimize this. And again, our view into this right now is a view over the machine. That's how we can see it boot. And if I click on this icon, you can see it's going to go ahead and launch off the ERP system as well. If I could click. So you can see here from the bottom, we have the same backup running in two different places. This is running inside your local device, and if you had a site disaster, this is running in the cloud data center, keeping in mind that this version was backed up last night, so it doesn't have that test document that we created. And I think we launched 2 copies. My apologies. There we go. And now here you can see we can go to posted documents. And again, just because it started up, it's a little slower, and so forth. So you can see basically we went from a live machine to a failover of an on-premise version of that backup, and if we had a true site disaster, we then failed over to our cloud data center. And everything I've shown you was just showing you one server, but we can fail over multiple servers, and in the cloud data center, there's no limit to the number of servers that can be failed over simultaneously. Okay? So we'll go back to our presentation here. And now we can open it up. If anybody has any questions, you can put it in the Q&A or chat panel. Does anybody have any questions at this point on what we have seen? And again, you can always, we'll have contact information here in a minute. If there's something you want to talk to us directly with, you can definitely reach out as well. Let me just put that contact information up here. We have Kelly Saunders, who's on this webinar. She's our Director of Eversafe and Azure Sales. This is her email address. This is her direct phone number as well. And the website that we have that shows the total solution, including a demo similar to what we just did, is at eversafebackup.com here, eversafe-backup. So if there are no questions, I think we've kept it within the time. I apologize for the few-minute late start, but I thank everybody for attending it again. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll also send out a copy of this recording shortly so that you can show it to anybody else in your organization. But if you really want a solution that can ensure no downtime at any time at a price that's not much more than a traditional inexpensive cloud backup, let's talk. Thanks again.